I'm searching for an answer. What do Auburn High students believe? Students of Auburn High believe about religion?
I think God created everyone. So even though there are different religions, that God made those religions as His own.
Overall, I'd say I'm a Christian. I'm non-denominational, which pretty much means I don't fall into any of the major groups, such as Catholic or Mormon or something like that.
I'm awakened because of the fact that people aren't always truthful, and they're like tearing apart the world, and it's like you're killing things, you know?
My view of the world is above everything else, I put stock in science and scientific advancement.
I guess my worldview would be Buddhism philosophically, not religion.
I started as a Christian, went through a time of skepticism, and eventually it led me right back to Christianity.
I'm Muslim. I was born a Muslim. My parents are Muslim, and that's how I'm Muslim. I go to church sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
I believe in God, everything. Try to pray as much as I can. Try to read the Bible when I can.
It's hard to slap a label on myself, but I guess you can say I'm a deist, which can basically be described as just a belief that there is a higher being, except what that higher being is may not be within the orthodox way of thinking of what is a higher being. I don't believe that there's a God in the general way that a lot of Christians believe in God through other religions like Judaism, Islam, etc.
The next question I decided to ask the students was, how did the universe begin in their opinion?
The universe is a mystery, and I don't know how it began, and I don't really think it's relevant to understand how it began, because it's irrelevant to the meaning of life.
I don't know. If I had to say, I would probably say just random happenstance, but I don't know for sure.
Really, I believe that God created everybody, and then He created Jesus, and Jesus and God are separate. They are not the same being. I don't follow the basic Trinity idea. So I pretty much believe that Jesus is God's Son, and that He was a man who was perfect and died for our sins.
I think it began as exactly as you see it now, except for less technology and more naturally.
I have a little bit of both. We evolved, I think, a little bit, and I think God made us evolve.
I think the universe always was. I don't think that there was just one time where just bam, everything happened. It maybe could be. Like, I'm not saying that I believe this and I will always believe this. I'm very open-minded about these things.
A lot of people have told me that science takes away from the idea of God. I wonder what the students believe about science and God.
Science definitely supports the idea of God, overwhelmingly. In fact, nowadays it's a lot more easy to believe in God because of science than to believe in, say, atheism or really any counter-belief to God. You could go to really any field of science and find evidence for God.
I don't think that science necessarily supports or removes the theory of God. I think that every scientific discovery and achievement we've made could be attributed to a deity. I just personally don't believe that there is one.
It pretty much removes the idea of God and saying, like, with antimatter and how you can't create a person out of nothing and things like that.
Depends on who you ask, but I think generally science proves that God exists because most believe that life in general is the evidence of a God, and science proves that life exists. So
I think science should support the idea of God as at least an alternative idea.
I believe there are two different things, religion and science. I find it perplexing that people always say, well, science disproves God, or God disproves science. I think they can both exist without interfering with one another.
You could go to just the smallest chemicals that we see. We find out that instead of random, what you'd expect from random chance, they'd be simplistic, if they'd even be there. You find a factory, a machine, more complicated than anything we've ever created.
Well, I believe that religion and science go hand in hand, that neither takes away from the other. If you put them together, they do flow together.
But I feel like scientists are maybe threatened by the idea of God, so that, I don't know, it doesn't, we're not even taught the idea of creationism in school. When we're only taught, Darwinism and, the idea of evolution, I don't think that's fair. I think if you're going to teach one, you ought to teach both.
evolution is real. It's proven, and there's no doubt about it.
Not to seem rude, but I think that if you don't at least believe partially in evolution, then you're just kind of ignoring pretty much fact, because it's more or less been proven at this point that at least some evolutionary process has taken place.
Evolution is often misunderstood, I think, on both sides. You have one side that says it's absolute fact. You have one side that says it's absolutely illogical to not believe in evolution. You have the other side that's a creationist, if you will, that believes that the other person is crazy to think that this could all happen by random chance.
I believe that evolution is real and it's proven, but I feel like a higher being went hand in hand with it.
And I think what's happening now is you have a paradigm in science that says that evolution, materialism, or that, supernatural explanation or design or anything that implies God in any way is not allowed to be part of science or an explanation for anything, because that would be religion.
I think, again, that God had created the components that allowed evolution to happen.
Why aren't monkeys still changing into humans?
I think that evolution is an interesting idea. I think that evolution change, if you want to talk about evolution as in change, I believe that change has occurred. Horses might have gotten bigger, giraffes might have gotten smaller. I don't know exactly, but change has happened. But the idea of everything going from a single cell organism to everything, I don't believe. And if evolution does exist, I believe that God created it that way.
I believe in evolution.
But I think intelligent design provides a better explanation for the evidence. I believe in evolution on a micro level, microevolution, which is, we can see variations in dogs and things like that. Macroevolution, I think, is a stretch of the mind. And if anything, the atheistic explanation takes a lot more faith than, say, if God, intended for it. Because when you look at it, the evolution itself is so unlikely that it would have to take a miracle for it to happen in the first place. So in a sense, evolution is actually evidence for God, ironically.
Recently, I had gathered together a group of Auburn High students to discuss their beliefs in what many called the Big Debate.
I'm Andy Schemelhorn, moderator for this debate, and I'd like to start by saying that no matter what everyone's different beliefs are, we're all still friends at the end of the day except Steve.
The discussion started with the opening statements. David Richter supported the idea that morals came from a moral lawgiver.
It's like the basis of morality makes sense in an objective source. That objective source eventually leading you to a moral lawgiver. If something is, for example, if murder is absolutely wrong, murder of innocent people, then it makes sense that there would be a law that would distinguish between what is right and wrong. And if there's a law, then that must be there's a lawgiver.
David was humorously known as the Army of One. Chris Jones and Stephen Hodge represented the side of deism, which is the view that God started the universe and stepped back and let the ball roll.
If you
I would argue that that's more ethics than morals. The difference being quite astounding when it comes down to it. There is a indicative moral compass that lies within all people.
Alex Fettigan and Clay Murray represented the side of atheism and were cleverly called Team Atheist.
With the moral lawgiver argument, I don't believe that a 2,000-year-old book is the basis for all morals. Many people don't read it, and I personally think I've turned out to be a great person without reading it and getting the morals from it. Morals do not come from some book. They come from within and the teachings your family gives you in the society. It isn't just, oh, well, this really old book told me that this guy rose from the dead and then took all of our sins away.
People have a universal sense of what is right and wrong. And I think in a sense we all understand that. It's not relative, it's not really based on everybody's opinion, because that would be my opinion versus yours, and that's a very dangerous road to travel. And at the source of it, the argument I was making was not in a sense about the Bible as much as a moral lawgiver, as in evidence for God.
Overall, the debate was very interesting and informative. Auburn High students have very different beliefs.
Wiccans are perceived as evil, like black magic, witchcraft, and like Salem witch trials, and they're not. They're just normal people who happen to believe in not genderizing things or destroying the world or anything like that.
I think that religion's good, but there can always be too much of a good thing.
Religion gives people's lives purpose. It provides a sense of community for others. And I know personally when I started to follow Buddhist beliefs that I was a lot happier and a lot more at peace than I was previously.
Personally, I think religion's made me a better person. I mean, it's kept my temper in control. It's kept a lot of things, If you don't have some set rules to live by, you don't have a moral code, then what are we doing?
Yeah.
And that people understand other people's religions and faiths, and that you don't just believe what you're told, especially when it's negative. Especially specifically Islam, a lot of people, associate it with terrorism, but in actuality, Islam means peace.
I just think that religion gets a bad rep because of some extremists, and I don't think that's really fair. And I think people who actually cared to sit down and read the Bible per se, they might see that it's not as bad as they think it is.
It's exciting to find God and to discover Him and to have a relationship with Him. And if you don't have that, then it's hard to know what I'm talking about. It really is. But it's truly amazing to know God.
If you have a bad lifestyle, sometimes you won't believe in God. And if you have a upbeat lifestyle and you're excited about life and you're outgoing, you have a strong belief in God. And I think I have an upbeat belief in God.
It's very important for both theists and atheists and agnostics and everyone else to respect each other's opinions and beliefs.
It's really amazing, some of the stories, some of the changed lives that I've seen because of Jesus. And what really sets him apart from other beliefs is when other beliefs try to, through works, get to God. Jesus came down and said, you can't come to God, so I'm going to make a way. I'm going to make a way for you to get to God.
Auburn High students have very different beliefs. The subject of religion and belief shouldn't be avoided, but instead encouraged, because we can all learn something from the war of the worldviews.